Well, you heard in the newscast the latest updates from Vatican City with the Pope lying in state, of course. We began this week with the news of the death of Pope Francis, and now the Catholic Church set to choose a new leader. And while there are 4 Canadian cardinals eligible to vote, experts say the chances of a Canadian pope are slim. The College of Cardinals now tasked with electing the next pontiff in a secret conclave. However, Canadian cardinals face challenges, including allegations of misconduct and limited experience among some candidates. Let's go to Emma Anderson now, professor of religious studies at the University of Ottawa. Emma, welcome to the program.
Hi, Elias. Nice to be with you.
Yeah, it's a tremendous pleasure to talk to you. Boy, I find this story. There's a lot of intrigue. There's a lot of interest in it. I wonder how much of it has to do with that recent movie Conclave. We'll get into that in a bit. But I want to start off with what happens now. Why don't you tell our listeners about the Conclave and what we should be expecting as this after the funeral?
Yes, well, already I think probably the cardinals are starting to stream into Rome, and they'll be having a double task to do. First, of course, to pray for the soul of and remember the legacy of Pope Francis, and second, to look ahead past that legacy to the future of the Catholic Church and decide who amongst them will be the next pope. Mm-hmm. Because even though technically under canon law, any male Catholic who's 35 years or older, unmarried, and of sound mind and sound body can be pope. So maybe even you, Elias, who knows?
There's still time, yes?
There's still time. Technically, usually it is a cardinal. And if a layperson were to be elected pope, then he would have to first, of course, go through ordination, become a priest, become a bishop, and then become pope. But it has happened in the past. Yes, so the process of the conclave, really this movie is invaluable in bringing us all inside because, of course, it's only open to a very select few. Not even the entire College of Cardinals can participate. There's 253 members of the College of Cardinals, but only about 140 are able to participate because of the age limits. And in fact, as you were saying in your introduction, one of our most prominent and senior cardinals, Marc Ouellet, has just aged out of being able to participate. He's a little bit too old now, and so he won't be able to vote in this one, leaving only 4 remaining Canadian cardinals who can.
And, since we've brought it up already, and I think it's actually a tremendous reference point for our listeners because, it was nominated for Best Picture, this film Conclave. And I think it's a good reference for the people who are listening to us who have also watched this film. Why don't we talk about, one of the things about this film was the politics in the decision that's happening here. There's geographic politics, right? Of course, Pope Francis was the first pope from the Americas. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so I just wonder if that how big of a role here will, because Pope Francis wasn't from Europe. Do you think that sort of leads to the conclave here picking someone going back to the roots here in some respects? How do you think that plays out?
Well, it's very hard to say, but one thing we can say is that of the approximately 140 cardinals who will be voting, many of them now are from many more different parts of the world. One thing that was very important to Pope Francis when he was still with us was to diversify the College of Cardinals because, of course, Roman Catholicism is not an exclusively European phenomenon, not even close. In fact, it's stronger culturally and socially in many parts of the world outside of Europe, including in the global south, which, of course, the Pope himself, the former Pope, was a product of, being from Argentina. Now, those who want to have the first non-white pope and those who want to have a continuation of Pope Francis's more liberal, progressive legacy sometimes face a bit of a paradox because many parts of the global south, most notably Africa, are bastions of Catholic conservatism. So in some ways, it's hard to kind of have both. But there is one candidate who really could do both things at once, and that is the cardinal from the Philippines, Tagle, who's known both for his liberal policies. They're very much in the mold of Pope Francis, and he would also, of course, be the first Asian pope. So that would tick a couple boxes there. And as you mentioned, in the movie Conclave, A lot of it's about prayer, but a lot of it's about politics, too. And a lot of the rituals, that's, I think, where the movie is closest to life, because some of the fascinating, arcane, medieval-looking kind of rituals that we saw there really do happen. So when we see in the movie the fictional Pope dies and his apartments are barred off with wax and red tape, they really do that. And when we saw the the Pope's ring being destroyed, they really do that too. And that's because, of course, the medieval tradition of papal bulls, you would sign them with your signet ring, pressing that into the wax to show that it's the real deal, it's legitimate. And so now, with that Pope's passing, he can no longer do that. The seal has to be destroyed.
We're with Emma Anderson, a professor of religious studies at the University of Ottawa, discussing what comes next as the College of Cardinals will be tasked with electing the next pope. So let me ask you, and I saw a visual representation of the cardinals, and it kind of looked like what you would see in politics when they'd show a visual representation of like the U.S. Senate, and they were showing like liberal and conservative and how many of each there. What is the breakdown right now? The College of Cardinals, how is it right now? Is it more liberal now, more conservative? How would you describe it?
I would say it is leaning liberal, and the reason why I say that is just stats. Of the 140 men approximately who will be voting, 111 of them were appointed by Pope Francis. Now, that doesn't mean that they're minted in his exact image, because, of course, Pope Francis was very good at tolerating people who were not of precisely the same, cut out of the same cloth as himself. But it's safe to say that at least they would be in the same ballpark. So if we just do the math and say 111 out of the 140 are in some way either centrist or maybe slightly more on the liberal side, that would seem to suggest that we would either have a centrist or a liberal candidate. And we've talked already a little bit about Tagle of the Philippines. The centrist candidate would probably be the Italian Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who's currently serving as the Vatican Secretary of State. Now, he is in some ways a more traditional figure, but he was very loved and trusted by Francis. He's more moderate than Francis, and the two didn't always see eye to eye. So he might be a candidate on whom both more conservatives and more liberals could come together, potentially.
And you need a 2/3 majority vote, right, to be elected pope. If it gets, if it's contentious and there's multiple votes, nobody's coming out, any chance, as what happens in life, sometimes when there's lots of fighting, you just pick the Canadian. Any chance there could be a Canadian compromise coming out of this if the Europeans and the Asians and the Africans can't agree on someone?
Well, never say never. Never say never. And I think that's one of the big things, and we don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen Conclave and who want to see it in order to be kind of a fly on the wall of the Sistine Chapel. And, of course, we want to encourage that. In fact, I've told all my students, go see Conclave because it's the closest you'll ever get to being in it, unless you, of course, rise through the ranks of the Roman Catholic Church. But to do that, you have to be definitely male and definitely Catholic at a minimum. So, yes, so that leaves our four in the running. Technically, Marc Ouellet is still in the running, too, even though he's over 80, because the rules state that you can't vote in the papal conclave if you're over 80, but you can still be elected pope if you're over 80. So he does still have a chance. However, as you mentioned in your introduction, both he and some of the other Canadian cardinals have been a little bit damaged by sexual abuse allegations. That's both Marc Ouellet and Gerald Lacroix of Quebec City. Now, this hasn't exactly been proven, but at the same time, unfortunately, in this kind of a case, just even the breath of scandal is enough to take away the papacy.
Emma, I got to tell you something. You're a fantastic communicator. I really appreciate how you just broke all of this down for our audience. In about half an hour's time, I'm talking about the NHL playoffs. If you can break that down as well, we'll have you back because you're just great at communicating and dissecting something. Thank you so much.
Well, That is very kind of you, but you definitely do not want to have me on as a sports commentator because I don't know anything about that at all. It's really religion that's my passion, and if it makes me seem like I know what I'm talking about, well, I'm very grateful for the compliment.
Stick to religion, Emma. Thank you so much. Come back soon, okay?
I will indeed. Thank you.
Emma Anderson, Professor of Religious Studies at the University of Ottawa.